Path of Exile 2 enters early access this Friday, and today I want to talk about a couple of the major differences between PoE1 and PoE2 that I think most people will really appreciate, whether you've played thousands of hours of PoE, or even if you're newer to the series and were never able to get into it, and especially if that was because of it feeling too complex or overwhelming. So the first big change has to do with gems. In PoE1, gems had to be socketed into your gear, and because gems define your skills, this meant that when a piece of gear is dropped, even if the stats themselves were way better for you, it was very likely that it wouldn't have the appropriate amount of sockets, or that they wouldn't be the right color, or they wouldn't be linked in the way that you needed them. This could be overcome with specific currencies, but it could get very expensive and would still come down to RNG, many times leading to that item that you thought was an upgrade not actually being viable. This is no longer the case with PoE2. Your items can still have sockets, but those are now used for a new type of item called runes, which can be used to add attributes like resistances, and they are limited to 1 or 2 per item and generally much less critical to your build. Instead of gems being socketed into gear, your character itself will now have a set number of skill gem slots, and each of those will have a number of sockets for support gems. By default, every character will have 9 skill gem slots, and more can be achieved through specific items or ascendancy skills. Skill gems will always have at least 2 sockets for supports, and you can use items to add extra sockets or find skill gems that have more naturally, up to a maximum of 5. The sockets themselves are no longer set to a specific color, so you don't have to worry about that, with the only color requirement being that your character has a high enough main stat, with red being linked to your strength stat, green to dexterity, and blue to intelligence. In PoE2, you can only socket 1 copy of each support gem. This means that you can't have the same support gem tied to all of your skills, which at face value could sound like a bad thing, but I think will actually be good and should lead to more interesting and diverse builds. And because support gems no longer have an associated level or stat requirement, it's encouraged and will be much easier to experiment with your gems to try out different combinations. Speaking of experimentation, let's talk about currency and respecs. In PoE1, up until recently, you were very limited with your skill points and how you spent them. This did change a little with the most recent league, but for the first 10 years of the game's life, you had a very limited number of refund points to spend, which could be very frustrating and made it possible to completely brick your character. But now, you can use a small amount of gold to reallocate skill points. Also, a number of nodes in the skill tree now allow selecting which main stat you would like them to provide, and can be swapped for a small gold fee as well. In addition, the currency to upgrade your items by either increasing their rarity, adding new stats, or re-rolling some of them will now drop much more often. All of this makes for a much more forgiving system and makes it easier and more compelling to experiment with your character and items. It seems like Grinding Gear Games really wants to encourage experimentation within PoE2, which I think is awesome, because I hate feeling like choices are permanent and that there's a wrong choice, and I've definitely felt that way in PoE1. It is worth noting that currently your ascendancy choice is permanent, but I believe you can respec the skills within that ascendancy. I'm hoping that based on player feedback that changes at some point and we're able to switch ascendancies, even if it's somewhat expensive, having the option would be nice. But either way, overall, I love these changes and think it will make the game much more enjoyable and approachable. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below what you think about these changes, or if there's another change that you're more excited about. This video was originally planned to cover even more changes, but I decided to split it up into 2 videos so that it wouldn't get too long. So let me know if there's a specific change you're looking forward to, and I might include it in the next video. As always, if you've enjoyed the video or it helped you out at all, toss it a like or subscribe to the channel. It's very much appreciated, and I do plan to keep producing PoE content throughout early access and into full release, so keep an eye out for new videos.